record on this computer. I'm going to click record over here and we are recording. All right. Are we ready?
Ready? Yes.
Okay. Well, hello, Jill and Marie.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. It's lovely to have you here. We just went through some technical difficulties as we always do. We have sound, we have ears, and we are ready to go. So I'm very excited to have you. And let's just jump right into it, shall we? Let's just jump into your elevator pitch. Tell us who you are, why you're here in 30 seconds or luck. 30 seconds or less. Good luck. On your mark, get set, go.
All right. Jill and Marie here. We both swiped right. We fell in love and decided we wanted to get married. Somehow totally accidentally proposed to each other on the same day, which was magical. Did the marriage thing, the house thing, and decided we wanted to start a family. So we went through the fertility clinic and sperm donor. And after 3 IUIs, we have our now 18-month-old daughter, Nora. And now we're trying to decide, do we grow our family again or do we just get a dog? That's
Boom.
it.
That was 30 seconds.
That was right on top. You practiced.
Wow.
You practiced.
A couple times in my car. I did. I'm not going to lie.
I
We're
love
very
that.
competitive, so that's awesome. You just won.
For sure.
That
Won
was-
all of them. Yeah.
That was perfect. That was amazing. And you managed to get the dog in there in true lesbian fashion. So I'm really
Yes.
Of course.
Absolutely.
really
There
proud.
always
You
has to
can-
be a
you-
dog.
And just for the record, you can always get a dog on top of the other kid. Not put them on top, but you know what I mean? Like you could always,
yes.
but I wouldn't necessarily recommend that. I would recommend waiting. Don't do it.
There's options. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Good to know.
let's dig in. So you swiped right. Does that mean you met on a dating app?
Tinder. Yes.
Tinder
The
success
dating app.
story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do think you had a picture of you and your dog at the
I did,
time.
I
That
did.
was a
Yeah.
selling point.
Yeah. And I think you were reading or something. So
As you
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
Perfect fit.
All the stereotypes. But yeah,
Yeah.
and then I think I think I asked you out on the first like 3 dates. I really went for
Mhm.
it. And then from there it was just, yeah.
I get a lot of crap for that too, because I didn't ask you out at all till.
Yeah.
But then like date 4, I was like all in, and you were probably like, "Whoa, back
Like-
it up a little bit." We're on
We
that
have the
date
thing where
4.
like I vividly remember her just bringing like an overnight bag, like a very stocked, like, oh, I'm sticking around kind of
which
thing.
I adamantly deny.
Yeah.
But
It happened.
She apparently
Oh,
saw
such
my
a
overnight
lesbian.
bag on date 4.
Amazing.
I know.
yes.
I was like, did we really U-Haul it? I don't
You
know.
did. You
We
Sure.
waited 10 months before moving in. I don't know if it's full U-Haul.
Okay, but the
Yeah.
overnight bag came at like night 3. So
Yeah. Yep.
I don't
Yeah.
know. Which means
So,
you
yeah.
basically moved in night 3. Let's be
Pretty
real.
much. Pretty
Yeah.
much. It was a large satchel for sure.
It was like Santa's
Yeah.
bag. Like,
Yeah, pretty much. It was bulky.
Yeah.
There was things falling out. Yeah.
It was like
Okay.
date 4 that I was like, my dog can come with me for the overnights, right? Like she's coming.
Oh, I love it. So but when you met, had you both been living that lesbian lifestyle?
Yes. But not for very long. I mean, I think we were both pretty late bloomers, right? I mean, I didn't really come out per se until I was like 25, maybe 26 or so. And then I had met you at like 28 maybe.
Yeah.
I
I had just started dating girls like the 6 months prior. So you were like,
I
maybe
guess
like
I was
the
a little
third
bit
or
more into it
fourth.
than you.
Yeah. Yeah. You had a little bit more going on there. So I was definitely a little delayed. Yeah. With the dating piece. And then, you were like my
Yeah.
third or fourth girl. And it was
Yeah.
just, I got lucky. So
Ew,
I always say
like
too, like,
6
I feel
months,
like,
third or fourth girl. Look at you.
I know, right? I was like, gosh.
well, you had like
Um,
more relationships too before
yeah.
me with girls. So I think you had more like mine was like a few dates here and there kind of thing.
But I always say too, like when we were in high school, I never felt like there was an option like back, like I say back in the day, we're not too old, but like in high school, it wasn't like really an option, really. I feel like it's like there really weren't a whole lot of people that were out, and that was like a social outcast at that time. So
Yeah, and that was still early 2000s, you
Yeah.
would think, but yeah, we maybe had like 2 lesbians in our whole grade, and they were Yeah, they were the social pariahs. You did not necessarily want to.
Things have come so far.
Yeah. Yeah.
Things really
but-
have, but I'm sure that still happens, like in
Mhm,
Mm.
of our country and other
Yeah.
countries.
for sure.
Yeah.
Where were you in high school?
I was in Massachusetts.
And I was
Okay.
Southern New Hampshire.
Yeah.
So I
Okay.
think we're definitely better than
Liberal
in,
Yeah, a
in
lot
New
of other
England.
places
Yeah.
for sure.
Huh.
More
Interesting.
accepting.
Yeah.
And our families are accepting too. Really it really wasn't a thing. So I mean, I think we're lucky in that sense. I told my mom and she was like, yeah, I know. Thanks for telling me. Like it's been a while. Like your friendships were a little too close there. So yeah.
I love it when a mom reacts that way, or any parent. Like that's
Yeah.
that's the best outcome. Yeah, I know. Thanks.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I appreciate you
Exactly.
telling me. That is
Yeah.
that's what you want to hear, right? And I love you
Yeah.
and I support you.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
we move in day 3, basically. I'm joking.
Yeah.
Things are beautiful, things are hunky dory,
Mhm.
and the proposal happens. What happened here?
Oh,
What is
yes.
going on? This is so I feel like this is just like the lesbian story. Like this is like
Mhm.
so okay, go ahead. Let's hear it.
So yes, we were dating about 2 years at this point, and
Mhm.
talked about wanting to get married, and we kind of landed on that I would be the one proposing.
Uh-huh.
Because you're just more romantic and I'm soulless at times. So it was like, oh, let's do something like fun and exciting for her, a
Let
fun
me
surprise.
pause for a second because I'm just thinking back to before my wife proposed to me, and it was like, this is something I haven't thought about. There is kind of a discussion. Well, for us, there was a discussion on who was going to be the one to
Yeah.
propose, and it was
Mhm.
decided between the two of us. This is so funny that you're bringing me back to this, that
Yeah.
she would propose. I was like,
Mhm.
obviously you propose. I don't know why I felt that way because we were
Yeah.
neither of us, like the dominant one in the
Yeah.
Yeah.
relationship, or like the manly one, so to
Mhm.
speak. But there was that's something that's unique to our relationships. That's so funny.
Right.
to bring that up.
And I
Yeah.
feel like we kind of knew too, like when we started talking, that I would do it. Like it was just kind of like, oh yeah, you would be the
Right.
one. But it kind of landed
Mhm.
on that reason being like, it'd be nice to have, you have like the surprise and whatever.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, so then we kind of came up with a timeline of like, I think we were talking about this in the winter time, and it was like by the end of the year, I would propose.
And I dropped a lot of hints to her, like a lot of like solid hints, like maybe you should do this and whatnot. So I just wanted to like throw you off, I guess.
Yeah, Marie's the one that like makes the things happen, and I kind of drag my feet. So it was, so I had the year to do it, and we figured out the rings. So then, I had picked out my ring and I knew what she wanted. So then we'd kind of both have them on hand. So when I proposed, she'd kind of could be ready to propose back. So then
I actually forgot a lot of these details.
yeah, not that long. This was
Wait,
winter. It was like
You
April.
were gonna propose, and then Marie, you were gonna propose back. That was the plan.
I don't even know if I thought it through that much.
Well, I think we
Did
wanted
I?
to have the rings.
I'm so bad.
I know, memories are terrible. I thought we wanted to have the rings so then like on hand. So then it was like, if you were able to like, not too long after be able to kind of like propose back kind of
Yeah,
thing,
she's
or
probably
like
right.
have the
Your
ring,
memory's
like
right.
then we could do it that way versus like waiting a while to get the ring.
Look at us queer
think.
stepping outside
Yeah.
the box with this proposal plan.
Right?
I love it. So outside the box. Okay. All right. So okay.
So yeah, so then it didn't take me too long. I planned for like that April. We had like a little long weekend getaway to Algonquin, Maine, which we like loved and had been to. So it was like a special place for us. And, I had this idea, there's, the Marginal Way there, which is like this beautiful, seaside like cliff walk.
But meanwhile, I had the same idea. So I remember in my head being like, well, she's just not going to do it for a while. So I'm just going to have this plan in my head and like just do it. And I also was like, this is going to be so much more surprising to her because I've been like dropping these hints and whatnot. So I was like, I'm just going to take the reins. So it's like what you're describing, your plan was mine. Like it's same spot and everything.
Oh my
yeah.
God.
And then down to like, I had called Marie's mom and her grandma like the 2 days before we left to kind of like ask their permission.
Mhm.
And you actually
Yeah.
called my mom and grandmother like the same
Yeah.
exact day.
And I actually sat down with your Nana and I told her, and there was just something about it. I was like, does she know something I don't know? Like, what is going
Oh,
on?
you did it in person?
Yeah, I did it in person
I am
with your
shocked she didn't
Nana.
tell you.
And then she had this look, and I'm like, what am I missing here? But now I know she was
hard
probably like, oh, you guys are both doing it.
Yeah, so they knew at least for 2 days, which I love my family. I don't know how much longer they could have held on to that information,
I don't know how.
if it was any longer.
Yeah,
Um,
big piece of
So-
information.
so then we get down to Maine, and again, I have this idea of this, in your head, right? This, it's nice and there's beautiful, cliff sidewalk and whatever, that's where I'm gonna do it. And it was like this fluke of a snowstorm. Like it was like hail and like a couple of inches in like the
In
middle of April.
Oh,
And so we were just kind of nervous about that. And we get there, and so we're obviously both in our own heads, just kind of nervous about our plan, and we just head to the bar. And I think I have a couple of drinks pretty quickly.
Oh,
It
yeah.
was
We should have known at that point because we were both, I don't think we were drinking real quick. Like,
Yeah,
who drank?
it was
And-
like a job. Like we needed,
Yeah.
this needed to happen like now. I want to say we were so not subtle about things too. Like you had
had a massive bag with me.
a massive bag that
Yeah.
had this, eventually had, like the sign in it that said like, will you marry me? I had like a champagne bottle, probably just like sticking out of my
Yeah,
purse. So
how
it's
did we
like,
not call each other
I
out at
don't
that
know.
point?
We
We're
were
both
just-
downing drinks. And,
yeah.
and then we're like, let's go for a walk.
Yeah,
It's a blizzard.
Yeah, beautiful day for a walk. So, so we, probably kind of tipsy, like huddle up in our, coats and start going on
In our
this
large
walk.
bags.
Yes, in our large bag, and start going on this
This is
walk.
like-
And
Maybe this episode is titled Large Bag.
perfect. Yeah. And so, I think, I had a little beach inlet in mind, and you had a specific one in mind. And, I think we kind of even ended up like bickering because you're like, let's just pull over here. And I'm like, no, like, let's keep going.
Because
Like,
I had in my
fine.
head, I was like, I'm not really like I hate being in the cold. Like
I
you're
know.
a nature person, but
I
I'm
should've
like,
known.
I'm not doing this whole walk. And I was nervous. So it's like, I'm getting to like the second cove and I'm like, let's go here. Let's go here. And you're like,
Yeah.
you were like, no, the next cove. And because I think you had a very much more
I
specific
did.
spot.
Yeah.
And I was like, we need to just turn. And I also was just wanting to get it over with because I was so nervous.
Yeah.
So I think we settled on that cove.
We did. We just pulled aside. It was like stupid weather out, and we're like, whatever, let's just do this. And and so we sit down like on a log looking, out the ocean, and Marie starts to show me on her phone. She starts to play a video, and it's like this compilation of like pictures of us, mixed with some music. So it was like super cute. Still hadn't really dawned on me then that you were doing anything. It's just like a cute thing you do anyway. So it was like, I'm still like in my head, like, oh my God, like okay, like this is great, but let me get going here on my proposal. And then the last like picture in the video is Marie holding a sign that says, will you marry me? Yeah. And I
couldn't really speak. I was just like, and then you're like, wait,
I pulled like the ring out of my pocket. It was just like, but like just could not speak either. Like, I think I just was like,
you did though.
Me
You did
do
a great
ring, like,
proposal. And I was so nervous at that point that I was glad that she hijacked it because I was like speechless.
I did.
I was like,
hijack
can the
it.
video speak for me?
Where she's like, I made a video.
Yeah.
I just need an answer. I'm not speaking anymore. That's it.
Yeah. Like
Yeah,
you saw it. What do you say?
Yeah, we both we just kind of blacked out for a bit, each of us. I think, you were bawling. And so then I was able to kind of like, get down on one knee and kind of, like act, do the full proposal
Aw.
piece.
And there was actually people watching us from above that were clapping that I didn't even realize they were there until after the fact. And I'm like, oh my God, there's like 15 people like watching us
Was
right now.
there?
Yeah.
Oh God, I just thought I remembered a
watching?
few brave souls.
Just like people
Going out
walking
for
the
a walk.
marginal way, like
They
we're
saw
just
it
kind of
happen.
like, they saw it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think someone took a picture for us.
Maybe
to say,
yeah.
So
But it's funny how you black out your entire environment when you're that nervous. I'm like, whoa, there's people out there.
yeah.
Yeah. And then
But
you
yeah.
said yes. And then it was like,
Yes.
and then it was history, and the rest is history.
Mm.
No, there's a lot more history to unpack, actually.
Yes.
There's
Yeah.
a couple things after, I guess. Yeah.
Amazing, amazing. And then you called your parents and they were like, I don't know how I held this in.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, we knew all
Yeah,
along.
I couldn't believe that they all knew, and it was just crazy. Yeah.
All right, so
Yeah.
why don't we skip ahead? So you get married.
Mhm.
Sure, it was lovely. It was beautiful, gorgeous, as all queer
Great day,
weddings
yep.
are, duh.
Mhm.
And then when does the family planning come into picture?
I would say like probably a year in or so.
Mhm.
We always knew we wanted to have kids,
Yeah.
like kid or kids or whatnot. And I think like we had bought our house like in February, and I think by the time it was maybe April or May, we started the process.
But that was also like, yeah, so that was 2020. So like
2020.
COVID just
Ugh.
just started
Mm,
too.
yes. So around May 2020. And we had known sort of that I was going to do it first. I just kind of wanted to do it one time and sort of one and done type of thing. So
To
I
carry
actually,
experience like
yeah,
uh-huh.
yeah. Well, and then we had our donor sort of picked out before that too. We kind of went through a search, which is kind of overwhelming. There are so many choices.
Let's unpack that donor search, shall we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I know it was a little bit difficult.
Yeah, so I'm like the type that like I just like to do research on like everything to the point where it's probably detrimental at times. So like we had paid for like the monthly membership, and then I went through like so many donors and like got it down to 3, and then I think you got your own list. And it was just funny because like our lists were like the personalities of the people we chose were so
Mhm.
different.
Mhm.
Like and I think at that point too, it was more about like obviously we're concerned about like health history, medical history. Like we kind of didn't really want a whole lot of that, but like
Yeah, we were on the same page about
I think
those
you
things
wanted,
for sure.
yeah, I think you wanted someone, correct me if I'm wrong, more like funny and like social. And I was like, well, yeah, that's important, but like I want them to also be like sort of like grounded and intelligent. And so we had kind of found like a middle donor that like made a couple jokes, because we got like an audio too and we got to listen to him, which was great because I think that really kind of sold me on that. So we actually made that decision, and then the next day I got a call saying, hey, are you really interested? Because I kind of put like 7 vials on hold, I believe.
Mhm.
And they had gotten so many calls like overnight, like, hey, if you're interested, you need to like kind of move forward with this because they were going to sell out. And I was like, this is our person.
This was at like one of the bigger sperm banks.
Yeah, Seattle. Well, I
Okay.
guess they're not as big. Like California Power Bank, I think, is a lot larger. So, but we went with Seattle Sperm Bank. And yeah, so I think at that point we're like, this is our person, let's do it. I thankfully didn't have any fertility like issues initially. And so like I think we kind of went into it thinking, oh, this is great. I got my first IUI and got pregnant right away.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you had
So
bought 7 vials,
yes.
which is wise because you don't know how long it's going to take. So, and especially
Right.
if he's getting bought up, you want to buy what you need, right?
I know.
Right,
And he was sold out at that point,
He
like only
was.
sibling only after we got our vials.
Oh,
Cause I
wow.
don't know how they do it. I think they track like how many, people are having babies or whatever. But yeah, so we had gotten pregnant on the first try, and I think I was kind of naive about it, to be honest. I think like you think everything's gonna be fine and you're like, this is wonderful, and you're kind of like in that happy zone. But I think like it's so early and you just don't think of maybe the negative things that could happen. And I think like because we had IUI, we had a 7 week ultrasound, I think. So everything seemed fine, normal. I went in and again, this was during COVID. So
Right.
I went in by myself.
Yeah, for like pretty much every appointment you had. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but for the heartbeat check, I went in and, they just couldn't find a heartbeat. And I think I was really surprised because all of my blood work was normal. Everything was doubling. So
Yeah.
like my placenta and body was doing everything it should be doing because my blood work was great. but that still doesn't tell you the health of like the fetus, which I think was surprising to us because you think of the normal, or I guess not the normal, but the stereotypical miscarriage, like maybe your blood work's off, it's low, like you start bleeding, whatnot. And that wasn't the case for us at all.
There were no signs. There was absolutely no
No,
sign.
there was nothing. Like I mean, I had a little cramping, but they told me that was kind of normal initially, just but I didn't have any bleeding or anything. And she didn't really even tell me that I was miscarrying. She's like, yeah, I would say this is concerning. Do you want to talk to someone? I'm like, well, yeah, like of course I do. Like, what do you mean? And I was trying to kind of get it out of her, but I think she was like not wanting to kind of say it.
She didn't want to say miscarriage, but then what does she tell? Like, how do you say it's a miscarriage if there's no heartbeat?
Right.
What a terrible thing to have to read between the lines without getting a direct answer. Yeah.
So I did end up talking to, I think it was like a nurse practitioner, and I went in and I'm sort of like hysterical at this point, and I'm again by myself. So I was like, maybe this person's just gonna like talk me down, like talk me through it. And she really didn't say a whole lot. She said, sometimes these things just happen, and sooner or later you'll start to bleed. And I was like, okay. And then I walked away. She called me back, and I was like, okay, maybe she's got more information for me. And she was like, you're O negative, right? So just make sure, like, when you do start bleeding, you give us a call. Oh my God. And I was just a mess. Like, I got to the car and I was just like, I was like, what do you mean? Like, what? And I was also like, I'm not going to just hang out until I start bleeding. That's like the worst thing to do to somebody, to just wait. So we ended up having to schedule like a D&C because my body just wasn't, it's called a silent miscarriage. I had never heard of it before. And I guess it just goes to show like there's just not a whole lot of education out there about miscarriages. I think and it's so common. I didn't really realize how common it is either. And I think, it was just kind of mind blowing, the whole experience. But
there's no education for things that have to do with the folks whose bodies contain uteruses.
Yeah, fortunately.
Unfortunately, right?
Yeah.
So learn these things while it's happening to us, which what the fuck, especially if it's a common thing.
Right.
Come on. Oh, I'm so sorry. And so
So I mean, that experience was obviously negative, and I think after that it was a bit rough because we did have to kind of go through a lot of stuff before we could have our next IUI. It felt like so long. It was probably like 4 months, but it felt so much longer. I think we had to get, I don't even know, like HS, like some types of ultrasounds to make sure everything was clear and ready to go. And then everything was fine. And then at one point they're like, yeah, you can do it in 2 months. I'm the type of person I'm like, okay, let's get back into this. Like, I just want to get back into it. And so they finally let us do a second IUI that September. So it was like May, and then September we had our second one, which didn't take. And then the third one took. And that
the third one the next month.
Yes. In October. Yeah.
All right.
Yes. So like we kind of got through that. Summer was just, that was a horrible summer.
Yeah. But it was hard because we were in that place too. We were like, it's not always commonly talked about too. And I think trying to figure out like, how do we share this news of a miscarriage? Like, or, do we, and who do we feel comfortable with? And then just kind of relegating like people's responses to that. And like, I think for you, like there was, if there were certain people you reached out to, and you'd be surprised how many people, have experienced miscarriage and like, it's just not as, talked about. And then, people trying to figure out, if you do share that you've gone through that, how to respond to that and how to offer support. And
I think for me too, I was so hesitant because I just didn't know what to do. And I think when I did share it, I was pleasantly surprised at the responses I got, because so many more people went through it than I realized. Like my coworker went through it like twice, and she had like talked to me about it. And it was just so eye-opening. A few of my coworkers had it happen to them, and friends. And so I think that actually gave me a feeling of like feeling better that like you're not alone in it.
Right.
It's so important to hear the stories. It's so important. That's the whole premise of this show. Like, we got to hear these stories so we know that we're not alone.
Right.
Yeah.
in this
Right.
whole
Yeah.
thing, right? So
Absolutely.
And we even had friends who, even if they hadn't gone through that experience personally, just kind of responding like you would if, you've had a friend who's gone through a loss and, sent us a meal or just for checking in a little bit more on how we were doing. And so, yeah, I guess we did find that in most occasions it was kind of nice to like talk
Share.
about it and share
Yeah.
it and because then we were getting support.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
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 So shitty thing happens, terrible.
Mhm.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
And then 2 IUIs later.
Yeah. So then we
Mhm.
got pregnant and the third try, and I was cautiously optimistic. I
Mhm.
think I let myself breathe around like the
Yeah.
ultrasound at like the 20-week ultrasound. But like everything went well with the
Mhm.
pregnancy. Like
Yeah.
I think I got sick for like a week. I probably shouldn't brag because there's so many people that are like like have horrible pregnancies.
Whole first semester. Yeah. Trimester. I said semester. That's
Whole
how
first
long it's been.
semester.
Yeah. Okay.
But
And so pretty
yeah.
easy
Pretty
pregnancy.
fast labor. Yeah,
Okay.
she was. The labor itself was pretty funny
Like
because
a
it was
solid well, you got there at like
You-
7 centimeters dilated, so you did a lot of work at you
Yeah.
did a lot of work at home, and then
yeah.
you got there
They
and it
checked me
was-
out, and they're like, "Oh, you're gonna have a baby today," and I was like, "No shit! Like I'm having a baby. Like get this out of me now. Like get me an epidural." Because they cut you off at like what 8 centimeters or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, we should tell the pillow story though.
Oh yeah, you sent me home. I think I almost missed her daughter's birth because you sent me home to get a comfy pillow. And then like I get back and like 45 minutes later, you're like 3 pushes and she's
Oh my
out.
God.
Yeah, the
So
nurse is like, you can take a nap. And I was like, these hospital pillows are not what I want to go to sleep. The nurse was like, you got time, go home. Because we're like 10 minutes away from the hospital.
yeah.
Right.
She comes back, and then the doctor came in and told us it was time to push. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I wanted to sleep a little bit. Like,
Yeah.
Oh
and
my God.
probably the first push, they were like, told me to stop because it was
Well,
like
the doctor
happening
wasn't there
so
at that
quickly.
point. Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think it was, I just saw the look on the nurse and the attendant's like face of like, oh, like
It's coming.
Yeah.
we're gonna
Yeah.
deliver this baby if you don't. But yeah, you should have seen the bag she brought for that. So
Yeah, there's a lot of large bags that come with me. I'm not a
I
light
had to.
packer in many scenarios. Yeah. Like wheel me out and I have like, bags on each in the back of the thing and like, yeah.
You
Yeah, but-
like the things you like.
Yeah.
You like
Yeah.
So baby comes, everything's great. And
Yes.
and now how old is baby?
She is she's 19 months now.
Mhm.
Yeah. 19 months.
Yeah,
And
Okay.
she's,
shoot a stamp thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
she's just the best thing
Yeah.
ever.
She's doing well. We're really lucky.
Yeah.
She's awesome.
Yeah.
And,
She's
well,
got
Because
personality.
wrapped around her fingers.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, that's how it
Delegates a
how it
lot of
goes.
tasks.
Yeah.
Mhm.
how it goes. But so Jill, in the beginning
Mhm.
of this, you said that, Marie, you said I wanted to do it. I wanted to experience. So I was going to go first. Does that mean you had already always thought you were going to have 2? Jill, do you have the desire to carry and do the stuff, do the thing?
I do not. We definitely went into starting a family thinking we wanted to, mostly just because, we have sisters. We just kind of wanted, we wanted siblings. So yeah, the idea kind of going into it was like, you knew you wanted to carry once, and it was, whether if you didn't want to carry again, like a sense of equity that I would kind of, try it again. This is
When
like
you
in your
have
head,
2
right? The perfect
uteri.
mind. Huh?
When you have 2 uteri, you have to be equal.
Right. Like, yeah, tag you're it. So
And I
we're
also
at
was
the
like, I
task.
don't know if I want to do this twice. but-
yeah. So then that was kind of the idea going into it. Right. So I didn't particularly feel like and I still, don't feel like an urge to, to carry on my own. So I was certainly happy when Marie wanted to the first time around. And yeah, we're kind of just in this place now of, deciding whether we want to grow our family or not. I had kind of just within the past 2 years, like not trying to get checked out fertility wise, had gone to my doctors just for like some concerns related to my period, and ended up finding out I do have, some some issues that would complicate the fertility process. So
Sure.
I went, about 2 years ago, my periods were just getting like a lot worse, a lot heavier and more painful. Kind of went down this path of, I'd gone in for an ultrasound. They said I had fibroids, which was really common. Hey, why don't you go get another, I got a sonohystogram, just to kind of take a full picture of that uterus and see what's going on, and discovered that I have this congenital abnormality. It's a unicornuate uterus, which I still don't even know if
I've heard of it. I've heard
Yeah.
Right. Like
I never heard of it before.
We hadn't heard of it before.
So explain it.
So yeah, so just
Do you want to explain the look on the doctor's?
oh my gosh. So yeah, so it's this like pretty rare, again, congenital abnormality. So wasn't and didn't inherit it, just like a random shuffling of how my uterus kind of came together. And I guess you have two parts of the uterus that are supposed to kind of go together and then kind of fuse in the middle. And with a unicornuate uterus, half of the uterus is like underdeveloped. And so that generally means that you usually have either one fallopian tube or two, and one of them's, non-functioning. And, it's generally like a smaller, and usually there's like fertility implications, I guess. You can get pregnant, but there's
there's not like a whole lot of research. Like, I think we were trying to look it up and be like, because again, I'm like, I need information. I want science. I want research. And I'm like, there's really not a whole lot out there, right?
Well, when you look at like the odds, I guess it's like less than 0.1%. Like it's like a pretty rare thing. Yeah. And as you said, there's just also not a lot of research and focus on it, on women's issues in general. But so I guess it comes with like higher rates of miscarriage in the first and second trimester, higher rates of like preterm labor, and generally speaking, you'd have to do a C-section. So yeah, I think it was just a crazy, again, when you talk about like your interactions just with like the medical, field or system as you're kind of, doing this fertility piece, it was just like an odd way of finding it out. Most women, I guess, don't know that they have a unicornuate uterus until they've had recurrent miscarriages, and then they're being seen in a fertility clinic. So it's just odd to be like, yeah, I've thought I knew what was going on down there. And just the experience of the appointments when I found it out was just strange. I was a doctor doing the procedure, not like my OB, and they, as they're kind of doing it, they are like, just so you have this, rare, it's a unicornuate uterus, and he says this, and I totally, leaving the appointment, don't remember what he's told me. So I leave and I go to Maria, I'm like, he told me I have this U uterus, it starts with a U, I don't know what it is, I gotta Google it right now.
Draw a banana or something.
Oh my god. Yeah, so as he's kind of explaining, he's like, it's not, there's no medical, implications, but there are fertility ones, so you want to, check in with your OB about it. And then from there, he's like, people with this type of uterus can have these, he uses the phrase, this rudimentary horn, but because he knows that he's saying all these things that I'm like a deer in headlights, he kind of describes it as this like little secondary uterus that's like either connected or like open to or connected to the uterus.
So technically we have 3 uteruses between two of us.
3 uterus between you.
3, yeah. We just got a little extra one in there. So he's like, I'm going to look for that one right now. Like, okay, sure. And then they're like, at that appointment, they said I didn't have this kind of like, non-connected secondary uterus, this rudimentary, closed off rudimentary horn. So there's like, now we're going to check your kidneys. Oh. Like, what do you mean my kidneys? Like, sometimes people with this type of uterus also either have one kidney or their kidneys are not in the right place.
Fuck.
Right?
Fuck.
What?
You're like, my
I'm
kidneys
sorry,
too.
what? Right. Like I'm going in for fibroids and now I'm like, I'm up a uterus and down a kidney. Like, how does
What
this,
the
how does
fuck?
this work?
And I have a unicorn inside of me. Like,
And I have a unicorn. Like I thought I had a good sense, right? Being, identifying as a woman, as a lesbian, good sense of my anatomy down there. Now I'm totally lost.
No,
Like
that's not-
no idea.
Oh my God.
My kidneys are fine. They're in the right place. I have
Yeah,
two
that's
of
good.
them.
Little mercies.
But yeah, right, exactly. And then yeah, and I think again because this doctor in all good intention was could tell I was pretty overwhelmed and with the information he was giving and not understanding it, decides to kind of draw a picture and he draws the upside down triangle and
Mhm.
this is the typical uterus, and then as he starts to draw mine, it's like kind of clear it's not like this is a everyone is a different shape and size and they're all beautiful flowers or whatever. So yeah, and he unfortunately uses, again, I think trying to use the layman terms, like it was like it's like a banana shape, and I'm like, oh, I'll never forget that you said that. Now that'll forever be ingrained
Oh my
in my
God.
mind.
Oh, that's helpful.
So yeah, so that, but I guess that's the general, it's just a smaller shape, which is why smaller size, which is why it tends to have more difficulty with fertility. I can get pregnant, but it's keeping the pregnancy, and then the labor piece that can add some complications. So yeah, I'm still very much trying to figure that piece out, and now we're kind of in a place where we're leaning towards Marie, if we did want to have a second, Marie possibly carrying. But
I think there's also like so much like to think about too. I think I think a lot of families say, okay, I want 2 kids, and then they just kind of have the second.
Right.
I think for us, it was more thought. I guess we just put so much thought into it because there's so many different things that you like, lifestyle or financial piece of it, or like we mentioned, getting a dog, or like how much responsibilities do you want to have? But then also like it would be great to have for her to have a sibling. I mean, we have siblings, so I think for us too, it was just like, obviously the fertility stuff, but then also I think we're still in kind of two minds about how to move forward with it, and like maybe more towards a second, but yeah.
Because there's so many choices.
Yeah.
Because you're queer, right? So there's choices to make. There's decisions to make. It's not like, like heterosexual couples, they have the first and they know that if they have the second, it's going to be the same formula for the most part, right? You already figured it out that worked. We're going to do that again. It doesn't work that way with us. There's options, there's choices, there's decisions to make. And like Jill, like a big question I have for you is, do genetics matter to you? Do you want a genetic tie to one of your children?
It really doesn't matter to me. I mean, I don't have a genetic tie to Nora, and it couldn't matter less. And so I don't necessarily, again, feel the need to have a genetic tie to a possible second. Right now it's really more what makes the most sense for us emotionally, in terms of how do we go through this process of it, knowing it could potentially be more complicated if I'm carrying, but then you're not super pumped about the idea of getting pregnant again, and the emotional toll I think sometimes you have from that.
I think for me, like, the pregnancy was fairly easy, but the aftermath, which I hear a lot about, is just like the breastfeeding. I'm not like I love to breastfeed and I love, like, I didn't like that experience. The hormones are just kind of all over the place. And I think it took me several months before I was feeling like myself again.
I think a couple years.
It's crazy. Yeah. I mean, really only like now maybe I'm into like my like workout routine and like getting back on track with things. But I mean, I just didn't realize how much pregnancy can really throw you for a loop, not really even just during, but the aftermath of that. Like sort of like you got to get your sleep back, your hormones got to get back to normal. You have to like start eating right. You kind of have to get And I think going from like not being a parent to being a parent is
Mhm.
a massive change in
Mhm.
itself. So
Huge. And then you'd be
yeah,
going from a 1 kid house to a 2 kid house, and that's a massive
Mhm.
right,
change too.
Mhm.
But like,
right.
also, did you use fertility drugs to get pregnant, or was it were they unmedicated?
No, so my doctor was kind of against that for me initially, just because they wanted to see if I could do it naturally,
That's
because all of my blood work and stuff was fine. So I didn't. They did do the second round, a trigger shot, I think it's called,
Mhm.
and it actually didn't work for the
Hmm.
second IUI, which I thought was weird because it's almost like maybe your body wasn't ready yet to like ovulate, and the trigger shot kind of gets you there, and it
No.
did that. It didn't work for me at that point when I did
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
I think also for our families who are using
Mhm.
fertility clinics to get pregnant, and like in my
Mhm.
instance, I was on fertility drugs for almost 3 years. And so my body had to get used to
Gosh.
not using those anymore. So there's that
Wow.
factor too.
Mhm.
I don't know how you did that. I remember listening to your story and being like, oh my God, like years. I'm
Mhm.
like complaining about like a
It's
few months.
But it's all hard. That's the point. Like, it's
Mhm.
all hard. After
Yeah.
getting pregnant, it's a miracle in and of itself.
Mhm.
Right.
Every single
Mhm.
freaking pregnancy is such a miracle when you think about it.
Hmm.
Mhm.
And then carrying it to full term, miracle. Giving
Hmm.
birth, hard and difficult and a miracle.
Mhm.
And then the
Mhm.
after effects, also
Mhm.
really difficult and hard. And it's not really talked about because it's
Yeah.
Right.
for the health of folks with uteruses. And for some reason,
Right.
Yeah.
we don't talk about that in mainstream as much.
Yeah.
They
Like, so
Yeah.
don't. They should.
ridiculous. But so
Yeah.
so you're kind of you're in between
Mhm.
places right now.
Yeah.
You're trying to figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah, we are.
Yeah.
I think we're leaning more towards a second because I think with us, like what we've talked about is, will we regret this like 10,
Mm.
15 years down the road?
Yeah.
Will we be at like Christmas and be like, oh, I wish there was another one here? And I talked to my sister a lot about it, really close with her, and she's pregnant right now with her second. And I think sort of when it came to my mind and what she reminded me is that sort of all of our negatives are more temporary things. It's temporary loss of sleep, it's temporary emotional stuff and financial stuff, but sort of like to have a 5 year ahead, looking sort of ahead and where you would be at that point. So I
Mhm.
think for us, I think we're leaning more towards a second, just because I mean, I think just if you can deal with like the first like 0 to 3 year, maybe things will kind of get like even out. And I just don't want to regret it later. I think
Yeah.
that's kind of where we're at with
Yeah.
that.
That's a good way to look at it. What path will you regret the least? Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think we kind of, the past few months we've kind of gone through this process. Like you said, it was like first it was like very like, rational, like pros and cons, and neither one of us were like had a real strong feeling either way.
Mhm.
And I feel like you could live in that space for months, if not
Mhm.
years, and then it was just recently, maybe like I feel like there's been a few times where we've kind of gotten a little baby fever or like,
Yeah. Oh my
yeah,
God.
or like,
Like the past couple months, I see a baby. I'm like,
yeah,
where's my baby?
definitely.
My
Yeah. Or
baby's
like,
running around now.
or like Nora will be, playing like with one of our friends' kids, and like playing is, loose term. She could just be like within 6 feet of the kid, and we're just like, oh my God, she's gonna be such a good sibling. Look at her, like right now, we've got to do
Yeah.
it.
She like runs up and kisses all the babies and
She's not
Right.
gonna do
tickles
that
their
for-
feet. I'm
she's
like,
not
Yeah.
gonna do that for her sibling. Don't worry.
Yeah, no, she's
gonna
not.
do
No,
that
she's
at all.
I
definitely
know.
not.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah.
But yeah, so there's like
Those
a little
ones aren't
more,
coming home with us. So
No.
yeah, this is like a little more emotion kind of behind it that I think has like propelled us to like, make some of these like, we have some follow-up like appointments kind of coming up just to kind of get the ball rolling. But then again, it's like roller coaster
Yeah.
ride, because now we're just like, now that we're like, it's like hitting us, we're kind of taking some like concrete steps to start it. It's like, oof, this whole
Yeah.
process again.
We're also not like the
what
youngest
is it gonna look
chickens
like?
and the
Right.
Yeah.
The
on the
clock,
farm, so.
is ticking. So you have to make
Mhm.
your decision. But here, if there's one thing I know,
Mhm.
whatever decision you make and stick
Mhm.
with is going to be the right decision.
Mhm.
And you have to be confident in that. And now as we always say, I'm
Mhm.
invested. So you have to let me know, and you have to keep me
Yes.
posted. And I'll
Mhm.
tell all the listeners, because we're all invested now. We want to know, did you go for number 2 or not? Because I think a
Yeah.
lot of our listeners at home
Yeah.
grapple with the same exact
Mm.
decision, right? And it's
Yeah.
a real serious decision, especially for our families. So I'm
Yeah.
glad you talked it through with me, and now you have to tell us what you
Yes,
decide.
we will.
Yeah,
We will
we
definitely
will.
follow up. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for telling this story. I'm so glad you reached out.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Thank you
thanks
so
for
much for
having
having
us.
us.
We love
It
the
was awesome.
podcast.
Yes, we're big fans.
Oh, well, I'm a big fan of you.
Can we add one more bag like joke in there? Is there
Yeah.
yeah.
Do we have any more bags? Like, is there a bag between you right now? Like, are we? Well, thank you so much. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, thanks so much, Jamie.
Don't go anywhere.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, don't leave me. I'm just gonna hit
Yeah.
record in all the places. So I stopped the recording. So that was awesome. How do you feel?
Good.
Good. Yeah. Like, yeah, it was kind of easy. Just felt like a conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. It's great. It was great to kind of like walk through things and everything.
Yeah.